The Joe Rogan Experience.
You should tell him some of the stuff that you read that you don't know is true. I mean, if the stuff was true about the propulsion stuff, I mean, anyway,
Well, what have you read?
What you saw too. I mean, you know.
What are you talking about? Spill the beans, Bob.
I got to poke the bear here a little bit.
Get some more liquor in you.
Well, I mean, the only thing I could verify was what I had my hands on. There was talk of weapon systems, that there were different projects. Project Galileo, Project Sidekick was supposed to be weapon applications of the craft. Project Looking Glass had to do with time, any effects of time in the craft. Now, I don't think we're not talking about making a time machine like in science fiction, but we're talking about, small distortions, intentional distortions of time, and how that can be used, as a not as a it was part of a weapon program.
How are you informed in this?
These again were just the small briefings that I read, but again, I don't really like to talk about those because I don't have any information on them, and it was just small briefings.
But you told Commander Fravor that what he saw might have been a time dilation and not
it could be
propulsion.
Because gravity affects time. Space time. I'm sure you've heard of that, and what Commander Fravor saw as he was in the F-18 approaching it, he said he described it as a ping pong ball in a cup and shaking it back and forth. It was moving that fast. Now, obviously, if there's anything inside there, it's going to be battered to hell. But, my point was that, one of two things. Either there's a gravitational envelope in there which negates any inertia effects, or you are seeing through a gravity distortion field. So, just like you're looking at a hot highway and you see, an optical distortion going through there. Well, the same thing happens in gravity, and the craft may not actually be moving like that. It may just look like it because you can only see it through the field. So it may be making much more gentle moves. I'm not saying that's it, but it has to be one of the two.
And the thing shows up 60 miles away. They noticed it on radar 60 seconds after it left Commander Fravor, but it was at his cap point, which is the next point he was destined to go to, 60 miles away. And in 60 seconds on radar, the same object ends up there.
So it's going a mile a second?
No, I think the radar just picked it up in 60 seconds.
Yeah, it could have been there instantly, but
we don't know.
The cycle time.
Nobody knows. That's the whole thing.
So it cycles, like radar cycles? Like
it doesn't sweep, but
right,
I mean, it scans. It's a planar
antenna.
array, so it just, it scans around at random places.
That's the Spy one does the really cool. Yeah, it doesn't do the whole loop anymore.
Right. The point is, though, that the craft moved to his next location before he knew where his next location was going to be.
Jesus.
And that's well documented. So that's a pretty shocking piece of information.
What's fascinating to me too is that you were discussing this, the way this reactor worked, and that these things were not really connected.
No, nothing is connected. There's no wiring at all.
That freaks me the fuck out.
Charge your iPhone,
Yeah. Wireless.
Yeah, I mean that's a simple electromagnetic.
Tesla.
Yeah, I know again, but that's just simple electromagnetic induction.
Right, but I mean Tesla, the scientist, had this concept of
right. That's
what he's,
that's what I'm talking about.
I mean, for other people that don't know what we're saying, he wanted to send wireless electricity through the sky, and Westinghouse was like, "Get the fuck out of here with that." Like when anybody could just pull electricity out of the sky.
Can't meter it.
Yeah, they couldn't. They couldn't.
We had this talk in the car right over. I'm trying to chill him out. We're talking about Tesla and how he couldn't be metered and how it all went down. So it's funny you bring it up.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, who knows what would have happened in terms of innovation had he been allowed to go forward with that?
Well, we probably wouldn't have computers.
You think?
Yeah, I'm pretty positive.
Why is that?
Forget about microelectronics. Well, this is dumping huge amounts of electromagnetic energy in the air. And we'd be able to wirelessly turn on our lights, but there'd be no radio communication. The interference would be something would be overwhelming. It would induce electric currents in anything with a small wire on it. So integrated circuits, transistors would be disintegrated before they were even, tested for operation. So it would
Maybe
destroy.
it would have fucked us up.
Yeah, it would have stopped us dead. It'd be great. You can turn lighters on and heaters from all over the place with no wires, but it would stop modern electronics.
And if we became dependent on it, it would almost be like our dependence on fossil fuels. Although it's destructive, it's very difficult for us to get off the nipple.
It would have changed the course of how we developed, which is so interesting when you talk about if a civilization, another star system, didn't even start with fossil fuels. They had 115 naturally on their planet, and they're like, cool, anti-gravity is pretty awesome.
Well, the fact that they
I think it's important that actually happened.
Yeah.
It might have been stopped in its tracks for a reason.
Whoa. And I think it's incredibly difficult for us to imagine technological progression under another timeline other than the one that we've experienced.
Yeah, that's difficult.
If we imagine what this alien race must have been like, and God, just to be able to see something, obviously we've seen it in different life forms, right? Like we see the life of certain beetles in comparison to the life of certain fish. Very, very different existence, very different life cycles.
Octopus.
Yeah, octopus. Yeah, we see all these different variables in terms of biological entities on Earth, but we don't see it in terms of technological innovation, as we're the only one that's intelligent that can innovate. We have intelligent creatures, but they're in the ocean. The only other thing that are like us are dolphins and orcas and whales, and they don't have the ability to manipulate their environment. And subsequently, because they don't have the ability to manipulate their environment, we put them in fish tanks. And we're like, get in the tank, do some tricks.
Right.
The only thing he saw in the craft, if we were considering Bob's story, the only thing that he saw in the craft that he related to that looked like a human could make was this honeycomb hatch. And I always loved that because you're like obsessed with this thing that you could recognize.
I only focus on that because it was the one thing that I understood how it worked.
What was it?
And it was the access to the level below, and it was if you take you have a 6-pack of beer and you take out the cardboard dividers, set it on the table, you can put a lot of pressure on the top. But if you push it from the sides, it collapses flat. So it was something like that in a honeycomb shape that was essentially some sort of sheet metal, and you could walk on that in the upper layer, but if you took the corner, stuck your finger in, and pushed, it collapsed and made an entryway. So I thought that was a really unique, I'd never seen that before, and it was the only thing in the craft that made absolute sense to me. I said, we can make that, and all that is a hatchway.
Was there any discussion about the materials that were used to make the craft?
I'm sure there was, but that was the metallurgy division. It had nothing to do with us.
So you never got
not even the slightest briefing. I don't even know if it was metal or it was ceramic. I think there's a fine line between the two.